Do not answer that. Valerie's voice was barely above a whisper as she leaned closer across the mahogany desk, her fingers resting on the merger documents scattered between them. The office was dark except for the glow of the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the single lamp casting shadows across Conrad Whitmore's face. His phone lit up on the desk. Margot's name appeared on the screen, her photo from a charity gala 3 years ago smiling up at him. She knows I am in the middle of the Harrington negotiations. Conrad reached for the phone without looking at Valerie. This is the 3rd time tonight. He silenced the call and turned the phone face down. Valerie watched him with an expression that held too much familiarity for a professional relationship. She never calls this late. Is something wrong? If something were wrong, she would say so. Conrad pulled another document toward him, his reading glasses reflecting the lamplight. Margot understands how business works. She knows Claire is coming this weekend, and whatever it is can wait until I am home. The phone buzzed again. A second call. He silenced it without even checking the screen this time. Valerie slid her chair closer to his, pointing at a clause in the contract, her shoulder brushing against his arm. The acquisition team needs your decision on the pension liability by morning. Singapore is waiting. The phone rang a 3rd time. Conrad answered with a sharp exhale. Margot, I am in the middle of something critical. I will call you back. He hung up before she could respond. Before she could say the words she had been trying to say for 3 weeks. Before she could tell him that the world as they knew it was about to end. Valerie said nothing. She did not need to. The silence between them spoke of 2 years of late nights, of boundaries crossed and recrossed, of a wife who had become little more than a signature on Christmas cards and an obligation at corporate events. Conrad set the phone on the far edge of his desk and returned to the numbers that made sense, to the deals that obeyed his commands, to the empire he understood far better than the woman waiting for him in a house he barely recognized as home. 300 miles away in Connecticut, Margot Whitmore set down her phone and stared at the medical folder on her desk. The diagnosis inside had not changed in the 20 seconds since her husband hung up on her. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. Aggressive. Treatable, but only with immediate intervention. She had known for 3 weeks. She had tried to tell him 9 times. And now, with their daughter arriving tomorrow, she sat alone in a room full of expensive furniture and realized that she had become a ghost in her own life. Visible only when convenient. Heard only when silent. The photograph on her desk caught the lamplight. Claire's wedding day, 4 years ago. Margot radiant beside her daughter. Conrad arriving late, still on his phone, missing the father-daughter dance entirely. Beside it, a smaller frame. Oliver at 6 months old, her first grandchild, the reason she wanted to survive whatever came next. Margot picked up the phone one more time. Not to call. To leave a message he might never hear. Conrad, please call me back tonight. It is important. It is about my health. I need to talk to you before Claire arrives tomorrow. She ended the recording and sent it. Then she sat in the silence of a $20 million home and wondered when she had stopped being the kind of woman who demanded to be heard. Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell where you are watching from and what time it is where you are at. If you are new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever. The voicemail notification appeared on Conrad's phone at 11:47 that night. He saw it while reviewing the Singapore projections, noted the timestamp, and decided he would listen in the morning. There were more pressing matters. The Harrington merger would be the largest acquisition of his career, a $14 billion consolidation that would cement his legacy as one of the most successful industrialists of his generation. Margot would understand. She always understood. That was what he told himself as he poured another scotch and returned to the numbers. That was what he had been telling himself for 30 years. Conrad Whitmore had built his empire on discipline and sacrifice. He had clawed his way from a working-class neighborhood in Pittsburgh to the top of the Fortune 500, and he had done it by never letting sentiment interfere with strategy. His competitors called him brilliant. His board called him visionary. His wife called him less and less often, and he had stopped noticing when that happened. He worked until 2 in the morning, then fell asleep on the leather sofa in his office. The voicemail remained unheard. The words his wife needed him to know sat in digital silence, waiting for a man who had forgotten how to listen. In Connecticut, Margot did not sleep at all. She sat in her music room, the one Conrad had converted half of into a second home office 3 years ago, and looked at the violin case gathering dust on its stand. She had not played in years. Could not remember the last time she had felt music moving through her the way it once had, when she was young and fearless and standing ovations in Vienna meant more than anything. She had been someone before Conrad Whitmore. She had been extraordinary. And she had given it all away, piece by piece, for a man who could not spare 10 minutes to hear that she was dying. The dawn came gray and cold through the windows. Margot finally moved from her chair and went to prepare for her daughter's arrival. There were things to do. There were always things to do when you were the invisible machinery that kept a wealthy man's life running smoothly. Claire arrived at 11 with her husband David and their son Oliver. The boy burst through the front door with the enthusiasm unique to 4-year-olds, his dark hair wild from the car ride, clutching a piece of paper in his small fist. "Gamma, gamma, look what I made." Margot caught him as he launched himself at her legs, lifting him with strength she did not entirely feel. The drawing was a family portrait in crayon. Stick figures with enormous heads. Gamma stood in the center, surrounded by flowers. "Oh, sweetheart. This is beautiful. Is this our garden?" Oliver nodded vigorously. "That is you and that is the roses and that is me helping you water them." Margot held him close, pressing her face into his hair to hide the tears that threatened to fall. He smelled of apple juice and the particular sweetness of childhood, and she thought of all the moments she might miss. First days of school. Graduations. A wedding someday. A life unfolding that she might not be there to witness. Claire noticed immediately. She had her father's sharp eyes but her mother's heart, and she saw what others missed. "Are you okay?" Margot set Oliver down and composed her face into the smile she had perfected over 3 decades of marriage. "Just tired, sweetheart. Let us have a wonderful weekend." David followed with the bags, kissing Margot's cheek. "The house looks beautiful. You have been busy in the garden. It keeps me occupied." The understatement hung in the air. The garden had been Margot's world for 30 years. Every bed, every border, every climbing rose had been planted and tended by her hands. It was the one thing she had been allowed to build for herself, and even that had begun to feel like maintaining a museum rather than creating something alive. Claire watched her mother with that careful attention daughters develop when they have learned to read their parents' silences. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the way Margot held Oliver a beat too long, in the shadow behind her smile, in the slight tremor of her hands. "Where is Dad?" "In his study. He got home late." Claire's expression tightened. It always did when the subject of her father arose. Of course he did. Oliver had already wandered toward the staircase. Drawn by the promise of the playroom, Margot kept stocked with toys for his visits. David followed to supervise, sensing that mother and daughter needed a moment alone. Claire stepped closer and took her mother's hands. "Look at me." Margot met her daughter's eyes. So like her own, the same amber warmth, the same capacity for seeing what others wanted to hide. "Something is wrong. I can tell. Please do not say you are just tired." For a moment, Margot nearly told her. The words pressed against her throat, demanding release. But the sound of a door opening upstairs stopped her. Conrad's study. His footsteps on the hardwood. "After your father and I talk," she said quietly. "I promise." Claire did not push further, but her worry only deepened. Conrad appeared at the top of the stairs, phone already in hand, typing something as he descended. He wore weekend clothes that still looked like a uniform, pressed khakis and a cashmere sweater, his silver hair immaculate despite the late night. "Claire." He offered a brief embrace, one arm, his attention still partly on the screen. "Good to see you. How was the drive?" "Fine." Oliver was excited the whole way. "Where is he?" "With David, in the playroom." Conrad nodded absently. "Good, good." He turned to Margot with the particular expression he reserved for household matters. "I have calls this afternoon, but I should be free for dinner." Margot looked at her husband of 31 years and saw a stranger wearing a familiar face. The young man who had once looked at her like she held the secrets of the universe had become someone who scheduled his family like meetings, who rationed his attention like a finite resource being allocated to lesser priorities. "I made your favorites," she said quietly. "For tonight." Conrad was already typing again. "Sounds good. Let me know when it is ready." He disappeared back up the stairs without asking how she was. Without mentioning the calls he had ignored. Without listening to the voicemail that still sat on his phone, waiting. Claire stared after him, her jaw tight. Some things never change. Margot said nothing. There was nothing left to say that had not been said 1,000 times before, absorbed into the walls of this house like water into stone, leaving no trace. The afternoon passed in the way of family visits that orbit around an absent center. Margot took Oliver to the garden, teaching him to identify flowers by their Latin names, watching his small fingers explore petals and leaves with wonder. Claire joined them, and for a few hours the 3 generations existed in something approaching peace. David observed from the terrace, playing quiet music on his phone, content to let the women in his life have their time together. He had married into this family knowing its fractures, loving Claire enough to navigate the complicated geography of her relationship with her father, accepting that holidays would always carry an undercurrent of tension. Conrad did not emerge from his study. The Harrington deal required attention, or so he told himself. The Singapore office was waiting. The board needed updates. There was always something that needed him more than the family in his garden needed him. From his window, if he had looked, he would have seen his wife teaching his grandson to cup water in his palms, carrying it carefully to a thirsty rosebush. He would have seen his daughter laughing at something Margot said, the sound carrying across the manicured lawn. He would have seen the life happening just beyond the glass, close enough to touch, too far to reach. He did not look. Dinner was a formal affair despite Margot's attempts to make it warm. The dining room swallowed intimacy, its 20-foot ceilings and crystal chandeliers designed for entertaining executives rather than gathering family. Margot had cooked Conrad's favorite meal herself, declining Helen the housekeeper's offer to help, needing this small act of care even if its recipient would not notice. Oliver sat in his booster seat, chattering about his preschool, his friends, a caterpillar he had found that morning in the garden. Grandpa, he said, bouncing slightly with excitement. "We found a really big caterpillar and Gamma said it is going to be a butterfly and I want to watch it." Conrad looked up from his plate, his phone visible beside his water glass. "That is nice, buddy. It was green and fuzzy and Gamma let me hold it and I was really gentle." "Very nice." Oliver's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, the way a candle flickers when the wind shifts. He looked to his mother, uncertain. Claire caught her father's eye across the table. "Dad, Oliver is telling you about his caterpillar." Conrad set down his fork, making a visible effort to focus. "I heard him. A caterpillar. Very exciting." "It is going to be a butterfly," Oliver repeated, his small voice less certain now. "Gamma said maybe we can see it happen." Conrad nodded, already reaching for his phone as it buzzed with a notification. "That sounds wonderful, Oliver." The boy fell quiet, pushing food around his plate. Margot reached over to squeeze his hand, and when she looked up, she met Claire's eyes across the table. The shared understanding between them required no words. This was familiar. This was always. David tried to redirect the conversation. "Claire and I were thinking of taking Oliver to the Children's Museum tomorrow, if anyone would like to join." "I have calls in the morning," Conrad said, scrolling through something on his screen. "But you all should go." "Dad." Claire's voice carried an edge. "Could you put the phone down? Just for dinner." Conrad looked up with the expression of a man who did not understand why he was being challenged. "This is important." "So is this." Margot intervened before the tension could escalate further. She had spent 30 years smoothing over these moments, stepping between her husband and her daughter, absorbing the friction so neither would have to feel it. "Let us just enjoy the meal," she said softly. "We do not get many chances to be together." Conrad set his phone down, though it remained within reach, its presence a reminder that his attention was conditional, borrowed time for more pressing concerns. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation. Oliver recovered his spirits when David began asking him about his upcoming school play, in which Oliver had been cast as a tree and took this responsibility with great seriousness. "I have to stand really still," Oliver explained. "But Gamma says trees are very important because they give us air to breathe and shade for when it is too sunny." Margot smiled at him, her heart full and breaking simultaneously. "That is right, sweetheart. Trees are the quiet ones who take care of everyone else." She did not look at Claire when she said it. She did not need to. Her daughter understood. After dinner, Conrad excused himself for a call he claimed could not wait. Margot supervised Oliver's bath while Claire dried dishes with David in the kitchen, their conversation low and frustrated. "It is the same every time," Claire said, her hands rough with a towel that did not deserve her anger. "He cannot give us one weekend. One actual weekend without the phone, without the important meetings, without making Oliver feel invisible." David took the towel gently from her hands. I know. Mom looks sick. Have you noticed? She has lost weight. Her color is off. I noticed. And he has not. Has he? He has not noticed a thing because he does not look at her." David had no defense to offer. He loved his father-in-law in the distant way one loves an institution, respecting the accomplishments while grieving the absences. But he loved Claire more, and that meant standing witness to her pain. "Talk to her," he suggested. "Tonight, after Oliver is asleep." Claire nodded, wringing water from her hands. "If something is wrong with her, if she is sick or something, and he does not know, I swear to God, David." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Later that night, with Oliver sleeping in the room Margot kept decorated with constellations on the ceiling, Claire found her mother in the sitting room adjacent to her bedroom. It was a small space, intimate compared to the rest of the house, filled with photographs and books and the pressed flowers Margot collected from her garden. Claire stood in the doorway, watching her mother page through a photo album. "That is from your first recital," Margot said without looking up. "You were 6. You played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and you were so nervous you forgot to bow at the end." Claire crossed the room and sat beside her on the small sofa where they had shared countless conversations over the years. The photograph showed Claire in a tiny dress, clutching a half-sized violin, Margot beaming beside her. "You were always there," Claire said quietly. "Every recital. Every play. Every soccer game that I hated, but you made me finish the season anyway. You needed to learn commitment." Claire looked at her mother, at the face she knew better than her own, and saw the traces of exhaustion that makeup could not quite conceal. Please. What is going on?" Margot closed the album slowly. Her hands, Claire noticed, were trembling. "I need to tell your father first. I have been trying to tell him for 3 weeks." The words landed like stones in still water, their ripples spreading outward. "Tell him what?" Claire's voice had gone very quiet. Margot looked at her daughter, and for a moment the facade crumbled. The polished, patient, endlessly accommodating woman disappeared, and in her place was someone terrified and alone. "It is about my health. I have a diagnosis. I cannot say more until he knows. It is not fair to tell you first when he is my husband. But you have been trying to tell him." "Yes." "And he has not heard you." The silence was answer enough. Claire's jaw tightened, and something old and familiar rose in her chest. The fury she had carried since childhood, since birthday parties where her father arrived as the candles were being cleared, since graduations where his seat sat empty, since her wedding where he had given a toast that included statistics about marriage success rates as if love were an acquisition strategy. "Then I will make him hear." "No." Margot gripped her daughter's hand. "Claire, please. Let me try again tomorrow. One more time. If he will not listen then, I will tell you everything and we will figure out what to do together." Claire wanted to argue. She wanted to storm down the hallway and pound on her father's study door and demand that he look at his wife for once in his miserable life. But the plea in her mother's eyes stopped her. "Tomorrow," Claire said finally. "But if he does not listen, I need to know what is happening." Margot nodded, and when she embraced her daughter, she held on longer than usual. "I love you, Claire. Whatever happens, I need you to know that being your mother has been the greatest privilege of my life." Claire pulled back, her eyes searching. Mom, you are scaring me. I am sorry. I do not mean to. Go to bed, sweetheart. Tomorrow we will sort everything out. But tomorrow would not sort anything out. Tomorrow would be another exercise in invisible women trying to be seen by a man who had forgotten how to look. Sunday morning arrived with the particular cruelty of beautiful weather. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air of the estate's grand rooms, making everything look like a photograph from a magazine rather than a home where people actually lived. Oliver woke early and immediately demanded to check on the caterpillar from yesterday. David took him outside while Claire helped Margot with breakfast, their movements around each other choreographed by years of shared rhythms. "Has he come down yet?" Claire asked, her voice carefully neutral. "No. He was working late again. He is probably still asleep. Or still working." Margot did not respond. She was arranging fruit on a platter, her hands steady even if nothing else was. The morning stretched toward noon. Oliver presented Margot with another drawing, this one of the caterpillar with enormous butterfly wings already attached. David played catch with him in the garden while Claire made increasingly pointed comments about the absence of her father at what was supposed to be a family weekend. At 11:30, Margot could wait no longer. She climbed the stairs to Conrad's study, her heart beating with an anticipation that felt more like dread. He was at his desk, of course. Laptop open, phone beside it, the eternal accessories of a man who had merged with his work so completely that separating them seemed surgical. Margot knocked on the open door. He looked up, registered her presence without urgency, and held up one finger. The finger. That single raised finger that meant wait. That meant you are less important than whatever is on my screen. That meant I will get to you when I get to you. She waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes. Conrad finished his email, sent it with a decisive keystroke, and turned to her with the expression of a man who had granted an audience. "What is it, Margot?" "Claire and David leaving soon." She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch seemed very loud in the silence. "I need to talk to you." Please." Something in her tone must have registered, because Conrad actually set down his phone. He leaned back in his chair, giving her what passed for his full attention. "All right. What is so urgent?" Margot approached his desk, standing rather than sitting, needing whatever small authority height could provide. "I have been trying to tell you something for 3 weeks. I have tried 9 times. At breakfast, at dinner, in texts you never answered, in calls you never returned." Conrad frowned. "I have been busy with Harrington. You know how these things are." "Yes, I know. I have known for 31 years how these things are. But this is not about the merger. This is about me." She paused, gathering courage, preparing to speak the words that would change everything. "I have been having some health issues. I saw Dr. Keene, and she referred me to a specialist, and the tests came back with." Conrad's phone rang. The Singapore office. The merger team. The sound that had interrupted every important conversation of their marriage for as long as Margot could remember. His eyes flicked to the screen. His hand moved toward it with the automatic reflex of a man conditioned to respond. "Do not," Margot said quietly. "Please." He hesitated. The phone kept ringing. "I have to take this. It is Chen, and if I miss him now the whole deal could." He answered the call. "Hello, Chen." "Yes, I can talk. What is the situation?" Margot stood in front of her husband's desk and watched him pivot away from her, his body language dismissing her as completely as his words would have. She listened as he discussed points and counterpoints, leverage and liability, the intricate choreography of billions of dollars changing hands. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. When he finally ended the call and turned back to her, she was gone. The door to his study stood open, and the space where his wife had been trying to tell him she was dying was empty. Conrad felt a flicker of irritation. Whatever she wanted to discuss could not be that important if she could not wait 20 minutes. He had a merger to close. She would understand. She always did. He returned to his laptop, composing emails, making notes, doing the work that would secure his legacy as one of the greatest businessmen of his generation. He did not see his wife walk through the garden one last time, her hand trailing across the roses she had planted when Claire was born. He did not hear her telling Helen that she would be away for a while and that the conservatory plants needed watering every third day. He did not feel anything shift in the universe when she pulled an envelope from her pocket and placed it on his desk while he was in the bathroom, laying her wedding ring on top of it, a period at the end of a sentence she had been trying to finish for 30 years. Claire and David left at 3 o'clock with promises to call when they got home, with hugs that Margot stretched longer than usual, with Oliver's tearful request that Gamma come visit soon to see his tree costume in the school play. "I will try, sweetheart," Margot told him, and the word try landed wrong in Claire's ears. She cornered her mother by the car, away from David and Oliver. "You were supposed to talk to him this morning." "I tried. He took a call. 20 minutes. By the time he was done, I knew." "Knew what?" "That he will never hear me. Not really. Not in any way that counts." Claire's face hardened. "Then tell me. Right now. Whatever it is, tell me." Margot looked at her daughter, at the fierce protective love blazing in her eyes, and felt something release inside her chest. The need to protect her husband's feelings, to maintain the facade, to carry this burden alone. "Not here. Not like this. Claire. I need you to go home. Kiss Oliver for me. And tonight, I will call you. I promise. By tonight, you will know everything." Claire wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed that she should not leave, that something terrible was unfolding that she could stop if only she stayed. But David was calling from the car, Oliver was getting restless, and her mother was looking at her with such terrible calm that arguing seemed impossible. "Tonight," Claire said. "If you do not call me by 8, I am driving back." "I will call." They embraced one last time. Claire did not know it would be the last time she would hold her mother in this house for many months. If she had known, she would never have let go. The car pulled down the long driveway, past the garden, past the copper beech tree Margot had planted 30 years ago, past the stone walls that marked the boundary of the estate that had been her world and her prison. Margot watched until the car disappeared, then turned and went inside to pack. She took only what she needed. Comfortable clothes. Her medications. The folder from Dr. Keene with the diagnosis and treatment options. A photograph of Oliver and one of Claire's wedding day. She did not take the designer clothes Conrad had bought her for galas and fundraisers. She did not take the jewelry that sat in its velvet boxes, rarely worn, more investment than adornment. She did not take anything that belonged to the woman she had been pretending to be for 3 decades. She packed the person she used to be. The person she was trying to become again. The letter on Conrad's desk said everything she had failed to say in person. She had written it over 4 hours the night before, drafting and redrafting until the words were exactly right. She did not accuse him. She did not rage. She simply told the truth, which was perhaps more devastating than any anger could have been. She had cancer. She had tried to tell him 9 times. She was going to Vermont for treatment at a facility that offered an experimental protocol, her best chance at survival. She would be there for weeks, possibly months. She did not know if she would recover. She told him that she loved him still, despite everything. That she was sorry she could not make him hear her. That she hoped Oliver would remember her if she did not return. The last line was the hardest. "I hope you remember me too." At 4:17 in the afternoon, while Conrad was still in his study reviewing contracts, Margot got into the car Helen had quietly arranged. The driver, a woman named Rosa who had worked for the estate for years, asked no questions. "Where to, Mrs. Whitmore?" "North. Vermont. I will give you the address." The car pulled away from the house that had been Margot's home for 31 years. She looked back once, at the windows glowing in the late afternoon light, at the garden visible beyond the stone walls, at the life she had built with hands that were no longer sure of their own strength. Then she faced forward and did not look back again. Conrad worked until nearly midnight. The Harrington deal was reaching its critical phase, and there were 1,000 details demanding his attention. He ate dinner alone at his desk, something reheated from the kitchen, barely tasting it. At some point he noticed that the house seemed quieter than usual. Margot normally checked on him in the evenings, bringing tea or simply sitting nearby while he worked. Her absence registered as a faint irritation, quickly dismissed. She was probably in her garden. Or in bed early. She had seemed tired this weekend, though he could not quite recall the specifics of their interactions. He would talk to her tomorrow. Whatever she had wanted to discuss could wait until then. There was always tomorrow with Margot. She was the one constant in his life, the fixed point around which everything else revolved. She would be there when he was ready. He fell asleep on his study sofa, laptop still glowing on the desk, phone charging beside it, the voicemail from Friday night still unheard. Monday passed in a blur of conference calls and strategy sessions. Conrad flew to New York for meetings with the Harrington team, returning to Connecticut only after dark. He did not notice that his wife's car remained in the garage. He did not notice that her bedroom door stayed closed. He assumed she was somewhere in the vast house, moving through rooms he rarely entered, tending to the invisible machinery of their life. Tuesday morning, he finally noticed something wrong. The coffee was not made when he came downstairs. A small thing, barely worth noting, except that Margot always made coffee before he woke. It was one of the rhythms of their life together, as predictable as sunrise. He made his own coffee, irritated by the inconvenience, and went to his study to begin the day's work. At noon, his assistant called with questions about the upcoming Harrington Gala. She asked if Margot would be attending. Conrad paused. I assume so. Why? We need to finalize the seating arrangements. I have been trying to reach her, but her phone goes straight to voicemail. She is probably in the garden. She sometimes forgets to charge her phone. He hung up and tried calling Margot himself. Voicemail. He texted her. No response. A faint unease stirred in his chest, but he pushed it away. She was fine. She was always fine. That was what he told himself. Tuesday evening, the unease became something harder to ignore. He searched the house, moving through rooms he had not entered in months. The music room, where her violin sat untouched. The conservatory, where the plants were slightly wilted. Her sitting room, where the photo albums lay open as if someone had been looking through them recently. Her bedroom. The bed was made, but something felt wrong. The closet door stood open, revealing gaps where clothes should have been. Not the designer gowns, those remained. But her comfortable clothes, her jeans and sweaters and the old cardigan she loved, those were gone. Conrad felt the first crack in the wall of his certainty. He found Helen in the kitchen, preparing dinner for one. The housekeeper looked up when he entered, and her expression told him something he was not ready to hear. Where is my wife? Helen's face remained carefully neutral, but her eyes held something that looked like judgment. She left, Mr. Whitmore. 2 days ago. She said you knew. Left. What do you mean left? Left where? For her treatment. She said you knew about the diagnosis. The word landed like a physical blow. Diagnosis. What diagnosis? Helen stared at him for a long moment, and in her silence he heard everything she was not saying. That he was a fool. That he had failed his wife in ways she could not articulate. That the woman who had run his household for 15 years knew more about his wife's life than he did. There is a letter, Helen said finally. On your desk. She left it there Sunday. Conrad ran. The study was exactly as he had left it, papers and devices scattered across the surface. But there, beneath the Tiffany lamp Margot had given him for their 10th anniversary, was an envelope with his name written in her careful script. And on top of it, catching the light like an accusation, was her wedding ring. He opened the letter with hands that would not stop shaking. Dear Conrad, I am writing this because I have tried to tell you in person 9 times, and 9 times you did not hear me. I am not angry. I am simply tired. So tired of trying to be visible in a life where I have become invisible. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Keene told me that I have stage 3 ovarian cancer. It is aggressive, but there is a treatment protocol available at a facility in Vermont that offers real hope. I am going there now. By the time you read this, I will already be gone. I want you to know that I tried. Friday night, when you did not answer my calls. Saturday, when you were in your study. Sunday morning, When you took a call from Singapore instead of hearing me say the words that might have changed everything. Each time, I told myself that the next time would be different. Each time, I was wrong. Our daughter knows. I called her Sunday night because I could not bear to carry this alone anymore. She held me over the phone while I told her what I could not tell you. I am sorry that she had to know before you did. But you were not available to be told, and I could not wait any longer. I am going to fight this, Conrad. Not for you. Not for our marriage. For Oliver. I want to see him grow up. I want to be there for his school plays and his graduations and maybe his wedding someday. I want to hold his children the way I held him. That is what I am fighting for. I am not asking you for anything. Not your time, not your attention, not the support you never learned how to give. I am simply telling you where I have gone and why. The ring on this letter is not a statement of divorce. It is a statement of truth. A ring means presence, and I have been absent in your life for so long that wearing it felt like a lie. Perhaps it always was. I loved you, Conrad. I have loved you for 31 years. I am not sure when you stopped loving me. Perhaps you never stopped. Perhaps you simply forgot I was here to love. If the treatment fails, I have made arrangements. Everything is documented with our lawyers. The garden plans are in my study. I hope someone continues them. I hope someone remembers what I tried to grow here. Take care of yourself. And please, if you find it in yourself to try, be present for Claire. For Oliver. They deserve a father and grandfather who sees them. I hope you find what you are looking for. I hope someday you realize that what you were looking for was right in front of you all along. Goodbye, Conrad. Margot. He read the letter once. Then again. Then a third time, each word carving itself into his consciousness like a knife etching stone. Cancer. She had cancer. His wife of 31 years was dying, and he had not known because he had not listened, had not looked, had not been present in any way that mattered. The voicemail. The notification he had dismissed Friday night, 3 days ago, a lifetime ago. He grabbed his phone and found it, still sitting there unheard in his messages. Margot's voice filled the silence of his study, soft and tired and heartbreakingly patient. Conrad, please call me back tonight. It is important. It is about my health. I need to talk to you before Claire arrives tomorrow. He had been with Valerie, reviewing merger documents, building an empire while his wife tried to tell him she was dying. He played it again, and again, and again. The phone in his other hand was already dialing before he consciously decided to make the call. Claire's number. His daughter. The one person who might know where Margot had gone. Claire answered on the second ring. Her voice was cold enough to freeze steel. You found the letter. He could not speak. His throat had closed around words that seemed too small for what he needed to say. Ed, are you there? Where is she? His voice came out broken, unrecognizable. Claire, where is your mother? Why? So you can send an assistant with flowers. So you can call between meetings to check on her like she is another item on your schedule. I need to see her. She does not want to see you. Claire's voice cracked, and beneath the anger he heard something worse. He heard his daughter crying. She specifically requested no visitors. She told me that if you called, I should tell you that she needs this time alone. She cannot mean that. She means you, Dad. She especially means you. You broke her heart so many times she had to leave just to survive. The words landed like blows, each one finding its target with precision. I watched you ignore her my whole life. Claire was sobbing now, years of contained grief finally breaking free. I watched you miss everything that mattered. I watched Oliver try to show you a drawing at dinner, and you could not look at him for more than 10 seconds. 10 seconds, Dad. That is all he wanted. Claire. She is fighting for her life right now. Fighting to live long enough to see Oliver grow up. That is what matters to her. Not you. Not your company. Not your legacy. A 4-year-old boy who actually sees her. That is who she is surviving for. The line went dead. His daughter had hung up on him. Conrad stood alone in his study, surrounded by the trappings of his success, holding his wife's wedding ring in one hand and her goodbye letter in the other. He thought of all the calls he had not answered, all the dinners he had missed, all the conversations he had cut short for business that now seemed meaningless. He thought of his daughter, who had watched him fail her mother for 31 years and finally could not watch anymore. He thought of Oliver, showing him a drawing, hoping for approval, receiving nothing but distraction. And he thought of Margot, his wife, the woman who had loved him faithfully for 3 decades, who had given up her music, her career, her identity to support his ambitions, who had tried 9 times to tell him she was dying and been interrupted, dismissed, and ignored each time. She was somewhere in Vermont now, fighting for her life. And she did not want to see him. The merger, the billions, the legacy he had spent his life building. It all turned to ash in his mouth. Conrad Whitmore sank into his chair and began to understand, far too late, what he had lost. Not his wife. Not yet. She was still alive, still fighting. What he had lost was the right to be part of that fight. The right to hold her hand through treatment. The right to tell her he was sorry and have it mean anything. He had lost the chance to be seen by the woman he had refused to see. And somewhere on a dark road heading north, Margot Whitmore drove toward an uncertain future, carrying their child's devastated grief and their grandchild's drawing and the quiet, terrible freedom of a woman who had finally stopped waiting to be loved. The night after Conrad found the letter, he did not sleep. He sat in his wife's sitting room instead of his study, surrounded by the photographs she had collected over 31 years, looking at a life he had been present for but never truly inhabited. There was Claire at 6 months old, sleeping on Margot's chest. Claire at 5, missing her front teeth, holding a violin almost as big as she was. Claire at 18, graduating high school, Margot beaming beside her. In none of these photographs was Conrad present. He had taken some of them, he supposed. But he was not in them. Not part of them. A ghost behind the camera, documenting a family he had funded but never joined. He found Margot's garden journals in a drawer, leather-bound volumes spanning 3 decades. He opened one at random and discovered a world he never knew existed. April 14th. The climbing roses finally took hold on the east wall. I have been waiting 3 years for this. Conrad was in Tokyo, so I celebrated alone with a glass of wine and the sunset. Sometimes I think the garden is the only thing that hears me anymore. He turned pages, reading entries that spanned years. September 22nd. Claire's first recital today. She was so nervous she forgot to bow. I told her that the music was what mattered, not the formalities. Conrad missed it for a board meeting. I did not tell Claire that he had promised to come. Better she not know he forgot. June 15th. Our anniversary. 20 years. Conrad sent flowers from the office. The card was signed by his assistant. I wonder if he remembered it all, or if it is just another task on someone else's calendar. March 3rd. I tried to talk to him about resuming my music. Teaching, perhaps. Something to fill the hours. He said it was not necessary, that I did not need to work. He did not understand that need was not the point. Purpose was the point. Feeling alive was the point. But how do you explain that to someone who has never felt invisible? The entries went on. Thousands of them. A chronicle of loneliness written in careful script, never shared, never discovered until now. And tucked between the pages, he found the poem. The one that broke him. I have become the garden no one visits. Tended alone, blooming unseen. Waiting for footsteps that never come. Wondering if the gate was ever open. Conrad closed the journal and pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw stars. He had done this. Not through cruelty, not through malice, but through something almost worse. Through absence. Through assumption. Through the arrogant certainty that providing money meant providing love. His phone sat on the table beside him. He picked it up and tried calling Margot again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again and again and again, as if repetition could undo years of silence. He called every cancer treatment facility in Vermont, working through the night, his voice growing hoarse as he demanded information about a patient named Margot Whitmore. Most refused to confirm whether she was there. Privacy laws, they explained. Patient confidentiality. Finally, near dawn, he reached Meadowbrook Comprehensive Cancer Center. "I am looking for my wife," he said for what felt like the 100th time. Margot Whitmore. She would have arrived in the past few days. A pause. Then the voice on the other end, carefully neutral. "Mr. Whitmore, we do have a patient by that name. However, she has requested no visitors and no phone calls during her initial treatment phase." The words hit him like ice water. "She is my wife." "Yes, sir. And she has made her wishes very clear. We are obligated to respect them. Can you at least tell her I called? Tell her I am coming." Another pause. "I can pass along a message, sir. But I cannot guarantee she will respond. Tell her I am sorry. Tell her I finally listened to the voicemail. Tell her I am on my way." He hung up and began making arrangements. Canceling meetings. Delegating responsibilities. Dismantling, piece by piece, the schedule that had consumed his life for 30 years. His phone rang midway through. "Valerie. Conrad, thank God. The Singapore team has been trying to reach you all night. The Harrington deal is at a critical juncture and Chen is threatening to walk if we do not. I do not care." Silence on the other end. "What do you mean you do not care? This is a $14 billion acquisition. This is your legacy. My wife has cancer. She left me. She is in Vermont fighting for her life and she does not want to see me." More silence. Then, carefully, "I am so sorry to hear that. But Conrad, the deal. Cancel it. I am sorry. Cancel the deal. Or walk away from it. I do not care which. I am taking an indefinite leave of absence. Conrad, you cannot be serious. After everything we have worked for." There it was. As if they were partners. As if what happened in his study late at night was somehow about work. "Valerie," he said quietly, "what we had is over. All of it. The affair. Your position. Everything. You are upset. You are not thinking clearly. I am thinking clearly for the first time in years. My wife is dying and she left me because I chose work over her. I chose you over her. And I am done." He hung up before she could respond. The drive to Vermont took 5 hours. Conrad left before sunrise, watching the landscape change from the manicured suburbs of Connecticut to the wild beauty of the Green Mountains. He did not listen to business news or take calls. He sat with the silence, trying to remember the last time he had been alone with his own thoughts. When had he stopped knowing himself? When had he become this stranger who ignored his wife's calls while she tried to tell him she was dying? He thought of their wedding day, 31 years ago. Margot in white, radiant, looking at him like he was the answer to every question she had ever asked. He had felt, in that moment, like the luckiest man alive. What had happened to that man? Where had he gone? The answer came to him somewhere around the Massachusetts border. He had not gone anywhere. He had simply stopped trying. Stopped showing up. Stopped believing that love required maintenance the way a business did. He had treated his marriage like a closed deal, something signed and finalized, requiring no further attention. And while he was busy building his empire, his wife had been building a garden alone, waiting for him to come home. Meadowbrook Comprehensive Cancer Center sat on a hillside overlooking a valley thick with autumn color. The building was modern but warm, designed to feel more like a retreat than a hospital. Conrad parked and sat in his car for 20 minutes, trying to find the courage to go inside. What would he say? What could he possibly say that would undo 30 years of neglect? The answer was nothing. There were no magic words. There was only showing up, finally, far too late, and hoping she would let him try. He walked into the reception area and gave his name. The woman behind the desk checked her computer, then looked up at him with an expression he could not read. "Mr. Whitmore, your wife is aware that you are here. Can I see her? She has requested that you wait. She is not ready to see you yet." The words landed like a verdict. How long? She did not say. But we have a waiting area, and there is a small inn in town if you need accommodations. I will wait. He sat in the waiting area for 6 hours that first day. He watched other families come and go, husbands supporting wives, children visiting parents, the quiet choreography of people facing mortality together. He saw what he should have been, what he had failed to become. No one came to tell him Margot would see him. At 8 that evening, a nurse approached him gently. Mr. Whitmore, visiting hours are ending. You should get some rest. Will she see me tomorrow? I cannot say. But she knows you are here. That has to count for something. He found the inn the receptionist had mentioned, a small bed and breakfast run by an elderly couple who asked no questions about why a man in a $3,000 coat looked like he had not slept in days. The room was simple. A bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the mountains. Conrad lay awake most of the night, listening to the unfamiliar silence, wondering if his wife was sleeping or lying awake too, thinking of him, deciding whether he deserved another chance. He returned to the facility at 7 the next morning. And the next. And the next. Each day he sat in the waiting room, watching the door, hoping. Each day no one came to tell him Margot would see him. On the 4th day, Claire arrived. She walked through the entrance with David and Oliver, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. Oliver spotted Conrad first. Grandpa. The boy ran toward him with the uncomplicated joy of a child who did not yet understand family politics. Grandpa, are you waiting for Gamma too? Conrad knelt to receive him, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, he was fully present in the moment. He looked at his grandson, really looked at him. The dark hair that came from Claire. The amber eyes that came from Margot. The eager, open expression of a child who still believed the world made sense. Yes, buddy. I am waiting for Gamma. Is she going to be okay? The question, so simple, so devastating. I hope so. The doctors are helping her. Good. Oliver nodded seriously. I brought her a picture. Do you want to see? He produced a folded piece of paper from his pocket, crumpled from the journey. When he opened it, Conrad saw Margot in a garden, stick-figure hands holding flowers, with Oliver beside her, both of them smiling. I drew butterflies too, Oliver explained. Because of the caterpillar we found. Gamma said it would become a butterfly. Maybe she can watch it with me when she comes home. Conrad's throat tightened. That is a beautiful drawing, Oliver. She is going to love it. Claire stood a few feet away, watching this exchange with an expression Conrad could not read. David had his hand on her shoulder, supportive, steady. You have been here every day. Claire's voice was flat, guarded. Yes. And she has not seen you. No. Claire nodded slowly, something shifting in her eyes. That is more than I expected. What do you mean? I expected you to show up once, get turned away, and go back to your merger. I expected you to send lawyers or assistants or anyone other than yourself. I canceled the merger. Claire stared at him. I canceled everything. Or walked away from it. I am on indefinite leave. David squeezed Claire's shoulder, and Conrad saw them exchange a look that spoke of private conversations he was not privy to. Oliver tugged at his hand. Grandpa, can you come with us to see Gamma? Buddy, I am not allowed to go in. Gamma needs some time. But you are her husband. Oliver's face scrunched with confusion. Husbands and wives are supposed to be together. Conrad knelt again, meeting his grandson's eyes. You are right. They are supposed to be. But Grandpa made some mistakes, and now he has to wait until Gamma is ready to forgive him. What kind of mistakes? The kind where you forget to pay attention to the people you love. The kind where you get so busy with work that you forget to be there for the important things. Oliver considered this with 4-year-old gravity. Like when you were looking at your phone at dinner. The words were innocent. They were also devastating. Yes. Exactly like that. Oliver nodded. Mama says sometimes people need timeouts to think about what they did wrong. Maybe this is your timeout. Conrad almost smiled. Almost. Maybe it is, buddy. Maybe that is exactly what this is. Claire and David took Oliver to see Margot while Conrad remained in the waiting room. 2 hours passed. 3. He watched the light change through the windows, the autumn sun moving across the mountains, painting everything gold and amber. When they emerged, Oliver was clutching a new drawing, one Margot had made for him. Claire's eyes were red, but she walked toward Conrad instead of past him. She knows you have been here every day. Conrad looked up. The nurses told her. She asked about you. What did she say? Claire sat down in the chair beside him, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight of worry she had been carrying. She said she was not surprised you came. She said she knew you would, eventually. But she is not ready to see you yet. She needs to focus on the treatment, on surviving. And she said. Claire paused, choosing her words carefully. She said she cannot fight cancer and fight to be seen by you at the same time. She only has strength for one battle. The words cut deep, but they were fair. They were more than fair. What can I do? Wait. That is what she said. Wait, and see if you are still here when she is ready. I will wait. Claire studied him for a long moment. I want to believe that. But I have spent my whole life watching you break promises to her. Watching you choose work over family. Watching her pretend it did not hurt. I know. Do you? Do you know what it was like, growing up with a father who was always somewhere else? Do you know how many times I looked for you in the audience, and your seat was empty? Conrad could not look away from his daughter's pain. I would wait for you, she continued. At every recital, every play, every soccer game. I would tell myself that this time you would come. This time you would see me. And then you would not show up, and Mom would hold my hand and tell me how proud she was, and I would smile and pretend it did not matter. Claire. It mattered. Every single time, it mattered. And I swore that when I had my own family, I would never make my children feel that way. Tears were streaming down her face now, years of contained grief finally breaking free. And then I watch you with Oliver at dinner, looking at your phone while he tries to show you a drawing, and I want to scream. I want to shake you and ask what is wrong with you, why you cannot just be present for one meal, one conversation, one moment with your grandson. Conrad reached for her hand. She did not pull away. I am sorry. Those words are so small. She wiped her eyes. They do not fix anything. I know. But they are where I have to start. Oliver came running back from where David had been keeping him occupied, a snack from the vending machine clutched in his hands. Grandpa, are you sad? A little bit, buddy. But I am okay. Oliver considered this, then held out his snack. You can have some of my crackers. Sharing makes people feel better. Gamma told me that. Conrad accepted a cracker he did not want, because his grandson was offering him grace he did not deserve. Thank you, Oliver. Your Gamma is very wise. I know. Oliver climbed up onto the chair beside him. That is why we have to make her better. Claire and David left that evening to return to Boston. Oliver's school could not spare him longer, and David had classes to teach. But before they went, Claire pulled Conrad aside. She will see you, she said quietly. Eventually. I know her. She is not the kind of person who holds on to anger forever. I do not deserve her forgiveness. No. You do not. But that is not really the point, is it? Forgiveness is not about deserving. It is about choosing to move forward instead of staying stuck. She hugged him then, the first real embrace they had shared in years. He held on to her, his daughter, the child he had failed to see just as he had failed to see her mother. I love you, he said. I should have said it more. I should have shown it better. I know, Dad. I know. Oliver hugged his leg fiercely. Bye, Grandpa. Take care of Gamma until we come back. I will, buddy. I promise. And this time, he meant it. The days became a week. The week became 2. Conrad did not leave. He took a room at the inn permanently, settling into a routine that would have been unrecognizable to the man he was a month ago. Each morning, he walked to the facility. Not to demand to see Margot, not to pressure the staff, but simply to be there. To let her know, through presence, that he was not going anywhere. He began helping at a community garden in town. The woman who ran it, a retired teacher named Dorothy, taught him the basics. How to test soil, how to prune, how to nurture something fragile toward growth. It is like raising children, Dorothy told him one afternoon, her hands deep in the dirt. You cannot force them to grow. You can only create the conditions and then wait. I was never very good at waiting. Most people are not. That is why most gardens fail. He thought about that as he worked. About all the waiting Margot had done over the years. Waiting for him to come home. Waiting for him to look up from his phone. Waiting for him to see her. She had waited 30 years. He could wait now. On the 10th day, he asked the receptionist if he could send Margot something. She is not accepting gifts from outside, the woman said. But you could leave it with us and we can ask her. He returned that afternoon with a small potted rosemary plant from the community garden. Attached to it was a note. I am learning. Slowly. This rosemary came from the garden I have been working in. Dorothy says rosemary is for remembrance. I remember, Margot. I remember everything. I am so sorry I forgot for so long. He left it with the receptionist and returned to the waiting room. 3 hours later, a nurse approached him. Mr. Whitmore. He looked up, afraid to hope. Mrs. Whitmore asked me to give you a message. His heart stopped. She said rosemary is for remembrance. And she said to tell you that she remembers too. Is that all? She also said she is not ready yet. But the nurse paused, something softening in her expression. She asked how you looked. When I told her you have been here every day, she cried. Good crying or bad crying? I think good crying. But I could not say for certain. It was something. A thread to hold on to. Thank you. Tell her. Tell her I will wait as long as it takes. 3 more days passed. On the morning of the 13th day, the receptionist called his name. Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore has agreed to see you. His legs nearly gave out beneath him. Tomorrow. 1 hour. 2 o'clock. I will add you to the visitor list. He spent that night unable to sleep, composing and discarding 100 different speeches. Apologies. Explanations. Promises. None of them seemed adequate. None of them captured the weight of 30 years of failure. In the end, he decided to bring nothing. No prepared words. No script. Just himself, as broken and uncertain as he had ever been. Margot was sitting by the window when he entered the small private room the next afternoon. The light caught the gray in her hair, the hollows beneath her cheekbones, the fragility that illness had carved into her frame. She was thinner than he had ever seen her. But her eyes, when she turned to look at him, were the same amber warmth he had fallen in love with 31 years ago. Hello, Conrad. His name in her voice. He had heard it a million times. It had never sounded like this. Margot. He did not move toward her. Did not presume to close the distance she had put between them. He stood near the door, waiting for permission, waiting for her to set the terms. You came, she said. I came. And you stayed. 13 days. I would have stayed 13 years if you needed. She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. Neither forgiveness nor anger. Something more complicated. Something earned through decades of shared history. Sit down, she said finally, gesturing to the chair across from her. We have things to discuss. He sat. The chair was uncomfortable, too small for his frame, but he would have sat on broken glass if she asked. I read your letter, he began. Every day since you left. Every word. Did you understand it? I am trying to. I am trying to understand how I became someone who could ignore his wife while she tried to tell him she was dying. And what have you concluded? That I do not have an excuse. That there is no explanation that makes it acceptable. I just stopped seeing you. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you. Margot nodded slowly. You did. You stopped seeing me years ago. And I kept waiting, hoping you would remember I was there. I pruned myself smaller and smaller, trying to take up less space so you would not find me inconvenient. And eventually I was so small I almost disappeared entirely. Margot. Let me finish. She held up a hand. I did not leave to punish you. I left to survive. If I had stayed, if I had tried to fight cancer while also fighting to be seen by you, I would have died. Not from the illness. From the exhaustion of being invisible. He wanted to protest. Wanted to say that she had never been invisible to him. But it would have been a lie, and they were past lies now. I see you now, he said instead. Do you? Or do you just see what you are losing? The question was not cruel. It was honest. It was the question he had been asking himself for 13 days. Both. I see what I am losing because I finally see what I had. What I took for granted. What I threw away because I was too arrogant to believe it could be lost. Margot was quiet for a long moment. Claire told me about dinner. About Oliver trying to show you his drawing. Conrad closed his eyes. That will haunt me for the rest of my life. Good. It should. That little boy worships you, and you could not give him 10 seconds. I know. He has been here twice since you arrived. Did you know that? Claire brings him on weekends. He sits with me and shows me drawings and tells me about his school play. He is a tree, apparently. A very important tree. He told me. Did you listen? I did. This time, I did. Margot studied him, and he felt himself being measured against every failure, every absence, every broken promise of their shared life. What do you want, Conrad? Why are you here? I want. He paused, searching for words that were not platitudes. I want a chance to become someone you can come home to. I want to learn how to be present. I want to know my grandson. I want to know my daughter again. And I want you to let me try, even though I do not deserve it. Even though I have done nothing to earn it. I want a chance to try. And the company. The merger. The empire you spent 30 years building. It does not matter anymore. None of it matters. He leaned forward. I walked away from all of it. The Harrington deal collapsed without me. The board is managing operations. I told them I would be gone indefinitely. Margot's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. You loved that company more than anything. I thought I did. But I was wrong about a lot of things. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the autumn wind moved through the trees, carrying leaves past the window in spirals of gold and red. I am going to tell you what I need, Margot said finally. And you are going to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? Yes. I need to finish this treatment. 6 more weeks. Minimum. The protocol is working, but it is not easy, and I cannot carry your guilt on top of my own healing. He nodded. I need you to build a relationship with Claire and Oliver that has nothing to do with me. That is separate. That is about being a father and grandfather, not about earning your way back to me. I understand. I need you to learn how to be present. Not for a week. Not for a month. For the rest of your life. I need you to become someone who shows up, who listens, who sees the people in front of him instead of the deals in his head. I will try. Do not try. Do. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. I do not want promises, Conrad. I have had 30 years of promises. I want proof. I want to see who you become when no one is watching. When there is no crisis forcing you to pay attention. How will you know? If no one is watching. Because Claire will tell me. And Helen. And the people in my life who have actually been present while you were building your empire. They will see. And they will tell me. He accepted this. He had no choice. And the ring. Margot gestured to his left hand, still bare. You are not wearing yours either. I left it at home. It did not feel right. Wearing a symbol of something I had broken. She reached into the small bag beside her chair and pulled out a velvet pouch. 2 rings tumbled into her palm. His and hers. Together. I brought them both. I did not know why at the time. But I think I know now. She held them out to him. I am not giving these back. Not yet. But I am giving them to you to hold. To keep safe. To remind you every day what we lost and what we might rebuild. If you earn it. He took the rings with trembling hands. I will earn it. We will see. Their hour was nearly up. A nurse appeared at the door, apologetic but firm. Mr. Whitmore, visiting time is ending. He stood, reluctant to leave now that he had finally reached her. Can I come back? Margot considered this. Once a week. Saturdays. 1 hour. We will see how it goes. Thank you. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Margot. I love you. I should have told you every day for 30 years. I should have shown you in 1,000 ways. I was broken, but I am trying to heal. She looked at him with those amber eyes that had seen him at his best and worst, that had loved him faithfully while he failed her spectacularly. Words are easy, Conrad. They always have been for you. Show me something harder. He nodded and left. Outside, the autumn air hit him like a blessing. He stood in the parking lot, holding their rings, and wept. The next 6 weeks became the education Conrad Whitmore had never known he needed. He stayed in Vermont. The inn became his base of operations for a life that looked nothing like the one he had left behind. He tended the community garden with Dorothy, learning patience through soil and seasons. He called Claire every other day, not to discuss business or logistics, but to listen. To hear about Oliver's school play rehearsals, about David's students, about the small moments that made up a life. He drove to Boston twice to visit. Not for an hour between meetings, but for entire weekends. He sat through Oliver's first dress rehearsal, watching his grandson stand absolutely still as a tree, radiating concentration and importance. He helped David cook dinner while Claire watched with something approaching disbelief. He visited Margot every Saturday, as she had permitted. They talked. Sometimes about her treatment, which was progressing well. Sometimes about Claire and Oliver. Sometimes about the past, excavating wounds that had never properly healed. Tell me about Vienna, he said one afternoon. About your career. About what you gave up. She told him. Stories he had never heard, or had heard and forgotten, or had refused to hear because they reminded him that his wife was more than a supporting character in his narrative. I was good, she said. Really good. The critics said I had something special. A way of making the audience feel like I was playing just for them. You still have that. I heard you play once, early on. I never forgot it. But you never asked me to play again. No. I did not. Why? The simple words, offered without agenda, hit Conrad harder than any boardroom victory ever had. I like playing with you too. You used to not play. You used to look at your phone. I know. I am sorry about that. But now you do not. Now you play. Now I play. Oliver nodded, satisfied. That is good. Gamma says people can change if they really want to. Your Gamma is very smart. I know. Oliver ran off to find more eggs, and Conrad stood in the garden his wife had built, watching his grandson and his daughter and his wife laughing together in the spring sunlight. He thought about the night when this all began. The ignored calls. The voicemail he never heard. The letter that shattered his understanding of his own life. He thought about the man he had been. The man who could build a $14 billion empire but could not give his grandson 10 seconds of attention. The man who could command boardrooms but could not hear his wife saying goodbye. That man was gone now. Or becoming gone. Transforming into someone different. Someone who understood that the only legacy worth building was measured in moments, not money. Margot found him standing there, watching the family she had fought to survive for. What are you thinking about? She asked, slipping her hand into his. About what I almost lost. Almost. The word hung in the air between them. A gift. A grace. Almost, he repeated. That is what I hold on to. The almost. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I am glad you finally answered, she said softly. Answered. The call. All those years of calls you ignored, all those times I tried to reach you. You finally answered. He put his arm around her, pulling her close. I am just sorry it took so long. Oliver came running back, clutching his basket of eggs. Gamma Grandpa, I found 12. That is wonderful, sweetheart. Can we go inside and dye them now? Margot smiled at her grandson, at her daughter and son-in-law approaching across the lawn, at the husband who had finally learned to be present. Yes, she said. Let us go inside. Together. They walked toward the house, 3 generations moving as one. Behind them, the garden bloomed with 30 years of Margot's patient work. Before them, the future stretched with possibilities that had once seemed lost forever. Conrad Whitmore had been a man who could buy anything except presence, command anything except love. He had built an empire and nearly destroyed a family. He had ignored the most important call of his life and almost lost everything that mattered. But almost was not the same as completely. And grace, when it came not through grand gestures but through small ones. Through showing up. Through listening. Through learning to see the people in front of him instead of the deals in his head. The merger that collapsed without him had been worth $14 billion. The life he had rebuilt was worth infinitely more. And somewhere in a garden in Connecticut, a magnolia tree grew toward the sun, its roots deepening with each passing season, its branches stretching toward a sky that held space for redemption. Some lessons arrive almost too late. The grace is in the almost. And sometimes, if we are fortunate and willing and brave, almost is enough. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We all have calls we have ignored, people we have failed to see, moments we have missed while chasing things that did not matter. It is not too late. It is almost never too late. But almost is a narrow window, and it does not stay open forever. The people who love you are waiting. The moments that matter are happening right now. The life you are meant to live is on the other side of finally answering the call. Pick up the phone. Show up. Be present. See the people in front of you before they become the people you lost. That is the only legacy worth building. That is the only story worth telling. Thank you for listening. Until next time.